Episode 288, The Great Green Wall and Local Resilience. This is the Change Underground. I'm your host, John Moore. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. Way back on the 2nd of October 2017, in episode 84, I first reported on the Great Green Wall. From that episode, quote, "So this green wall is 15 kilometres deep, a reforestation program along the southern boundary of the Sahara Desert. It will eventually stretch from the Atlantic to the Indian Oceans. The idea is to build a barrier against the southern movement of the Sahara. So that's the what and the why. But what about does it work? So far, Senegal is the most advanced with the planting and maintaining of the green wall. They have planted 11 million trees. The effect has been to reduce wind erosion, provide shade and increase microclimate humidity. But more than that, formerly dry wells have refilled. This has allowed gardens to be planted again, people to be fed and communities to flourish." End quote. Well, that was 5 years ago, so what's going on now? From the website greatgreenwall.org, quote, "The Great Green Wall is taking root in Africa's Sahel region at the southern edge of the Sahara Desert, one of the poorest places on the planet. More than anywhere else on Earth, the Sahel is on the front line of climate change and millions of locals are already facing its devastating impact. Persistent droughts, lack of food, conflicts over dwindling natural resources and mass migration to Europe are just some of its many consequences. Yet communities from Senegal in the west to Djibouti in the east are fighting back. Since the birth of the initiative in 2007, life has started to come back to the land, bringing improved food security, jobs and stability to people's lives." End quote. Now I got to thinking that such a thing should be visible from, if not space, at least on Google Earth. Maybe I'm not reading the images correctly or progress isn't quite as quick as I'd imagined. Either way, I couldn't find the Great Green Wall of Africa. The reports from Senegal show some promise, increased water flows, rain even, and increasing levels of prosperity, so that's a good thing. I'll keep an eye on both this project as reported and the Google Earth images. I truly hope this project works, can be replicated around the globe. There are areas of Australia where it could be used. The ongoing drought in the US could provide opportunity, and then there's the Gobi and its continued increase in size. A move from ploughing and or grazing to a three-dimensional perennial landscape in this particular situation, growing desertification, could serve as an example for other landscapes in how to cooperate across national boundaries for a much larger goal. So coming down from this 40,000 foot overview position, I'm coming down to about 5 or 6 feet in altitude. Back in episodes 281 and 282, The Future, parts 1 and 2, I suggested, given the years of pandemic and their effect on supply chains, that we should all find ways to grow at least some of our food. Now, given the situation in Ukraine and its unknown outcome, that suggestion seems even more pertinent today. Russia and Ukraine export huge percentages of the world's wheat, and Russia, after China, is the world's second largest producer of artificial fertilisers. Trade bans and so on are likely to hit the markets around the world. Whilst I am no advocate for chemical farming, the overwhelming percentage of agricultural production in the developed world, and increasingly in the developing world, is dependent upon these chemicals to produce food. Clearly a move to organic 20-odd years ago, as the Cubans were forced to after the collapse of the Soviet Union, as we've discussed in episodes 278, 191 and 184, would have us free from these supply chain entanglements. Maybe this crisis will see us as a species moving to biologically based systems of nutrient cycling and end our dependence on these oil-based inputs. I do live in hope. As we covered back in episode 191, the 100th monkey can't be that far away, surely. And I do have some hope. Last week I attended an online seminar, lecture, presentation I guess, entitled Intercropping, and it did what it said on the tin. It was extremely illuminating. The data confirmed all the things I'd read previously. This is especially so when it comes to mycelia in the system. The role of deep-rooted plants scavenging water and it being transferred through the fungal networks to shallow-rooted plants was amazing. The takeaway, or one of them anyway, is to ensure as diverse a root profile as possible. We would need to ensure perhaps some change underground, to make an obvious pun. Some reflection on the presentation led me to the conclusion that the perennial framework into which annuals are planted, either in a no-till, no-dig way or with minimal tillage systems, to maintain as much of the fungal network as possible, would be the go. This means the clover-based system I discussed back in episode 286 has much to recommend it. I'm considering adding thyme and roseberry mini hedgerows of our step-over nature around the edges of each plot. This would increase the root profile complexity whilst providing more bee feed and more places for the mycelia to connect in a permanent way. There may even be some malicious insect defence as well. And the blocks in particular are now ready for the buckwheat again, as the cayenne pepper I used previously to deter birds actually attracted the chooks to the seed. So we live and learn. The chooks will be excluded until the buckwheat is established, and I've oversown that with clover seeds, so say a month without chicken pressure and we should be underway. Time will tell. A bit of housekeeping. The last couple of months have been a little trying and this pod has suffered as a result. That period has now passed, fingers crossed, and I'll be back on a weekly release on Mondays Tasmanian time. I do apologise for the gaps in the feed. Now, if you need help to shorten your supply chains, there's a free ebook over at World Organic News website, and of course the No Dig Gardening courses there too. Links in the show notes. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. Thank you all for listening, and I will be back next week.